Hey everybody, it's your internet best friend and guitar control teacher Sean Daniel here. And today we're going to talk about multiple ways to play what you thought was a boring C major chord to kind of spice up your playing, give you some more options instead of playing just this kind of standard beginner chord. So definitely make sure to click the link below to get the chord chart /tab because we're going to go over some different voicings of a C major chord. So probably one of the first chords you ever tried to learn was this guy right here, okay? So, you know, when you're first starting out, it may be kind of difficult to stretch, get that third fret on the A string, second fret on the D string, and first fret on the B string to all kind of work together. But it's a really important chord because so many songs are in the key of C major, which makes C major one of the most important guitar chords that there are. But what happens to a lot of people is they get bored with that chord. So we're gonna learn a bunch of different ways that we can play C majors all over the guitar neck and kind of make it sound a little bit differently. Now, the important thing to remember is that there's no such thing as the C major chord. This is something when I was starting out, it's like, if somebody said, play a C chord, I would just automatically go, okay, here's the C chord. No, 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 that is a C chord. It is not the C chord. A C major chord is generally just any combination of the notes C, E, and G. Any way you slice it, doesn't matter how many of each note that you have. In fact, if we just look at this chord voicing right here, we have your ring finger's playing a C note, your middle finger's playing an E note, and the G string is playing a G note. So C, E, G. So that's all you really need to play this chord is just these three strings. Now, in this voicing, the way we play this chord, we have another C on the first fret of the B string and an open E string. So we actually have two C's, two E's, and one G. What we can do is we can actually add a lower G on the third fret of the low E string to kind of get a thicker double C, double E, double G sounding C chord. Now again, it doesn't matter how many. We could have 5 C's, 1 E, and 1 G on a guitar with more strings. Still technically a C major chord. It's called a triad. Any note with three, or any chord with 3 different notes is called a triad. So we're going to find some different voicings around the neck that we can replace this C chord with, because depending on where you play it, it'll give you a different feel. Maybe if you're playing with a singer, if you sing yourself, you might want to learn different places to do that chord. So basically we're going to start off with what is essentially an A major shape. If you know this chord right here, an A major chord where it's the second fret on the D string, the second fret on the G string, and the second fret on the B string. Another one that you learn really early on, you can play this with 3 different fingers. You can bar it with 1 finger, just like that. The nice thing about this one is we're only holding down 3 strings. Again, these 3 different strings give us the minimum requirement to make that triad. So we need to find out where this is to make a C chord. Now we could just take this A, go through the musical alphabet, A sharp, B, C, move it all the way to the 5th fret here. So this is going to be our first alternative voicing of a C major chord, just holding down the 5th fret on the D string, the G string, and the B string. We can do it with 1 finger, doesn't matter which one you use. Do it with 3 fingers, whichever ones you want to do. It doesn't matter how you hold these notes down, that's going to give you a C major chord, okay? Maybe you've even seen a bar chord voicing for this. It looks like this, really just taking part of it. The triad nature of this. So if you listen to the difference between an open C chord, and when I say an open chord, that just means the open strings are helping us out. Open C, 5th fret C, okay? So this is going to be voicing, alternative voicing number 1. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to find a different place on the neck to combine those 3 notes, the C, E, and a G. And we're going to go to this one right here. Now this is probably another shape that you're already familiar with. It's like an F major chord, right? The 3rd fret on the D string, the 2nd fret on the G string, and the 1st fret on the B string. Just like we did with that other shape, we can move this. So where do we move it to? F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. So now I've got my pointer finger lined up on the 8th fret of the B string, my middle finger is on the 9th fret of the G string, and my ring finger is on the 10th fret of the D string. So this is our second alternative voicing of a C chord. And if you want to know where the notes of this, like I said, C, E, and G, any way you slice it up, your ring finger is playing a C note, your middle finger is playing an E note, and your pointer finger is playing a G note. C, E, G. Now again, that's kind of in order again. You can hear the ascending nature of that. I want to go back to that first one we did real quick. If we look at the notes here, we're starting off with a G. The pointer finger, the 5th fret on the D string is a G. The 5th fret on the G string is a C. And the 5th fret on the B string is an E. So this one we have a G, a C, and an E. Another word for this would be called an inversion, where the lowest note is not actually the root note. The root note being a C, that's where we get the name C major from. So far we've got a regular open one. We've got the A-shaped one on the 5th fret, and we have the F-shaped one on I'm thinking of lining it up with my pointer finger because it's the back one. So I'm thinking of like the 8th fret here, and then kind of staircasing it down from there, okay? Now, the next one we're gonna do is gonna be a lot like this one, but an octave higher. So if we really just break that beginning C major chord that everybody starts off with to its very simplest form, if we just hold down the 1st fret of the B string, that's a C. Now, the open G string is right there, and the open E string is on top. So this is a G, a C, and an E. Now, if you just play these 3 strings, that's the absolute easiest way that you can play a C major chord. We only had these other strings being held down because it kind of thickens and gives a fullness to that chord, right? Now, when I said we're going to play an octave of this, all that means is we're going to go 12 frets higher, the whole thing. So the G string, instead of being open, is going to be 12. The 1st fret, instead of being 1, is going to be 13. And the open E string is going to be 12. So this is going to be our next voicing of a C major chord. This actually is probably another familiar shape that you know when you learned how to play a D major chord. Now again, we can do the same thing with the other ones. Count through the entire musical alphabet. D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C. That brings us all the way to that octave higher. That's why it's kind of a good way to maybe approach where these notes exist from kind of different patterns, okay? So again, we have 3 new voicings, which the shapes aren't new for a lot of you, which is great because you don't really have to train your hand into trying to crush it into a new shape. We can use existing shapes, but by just getting a little bit more fretboard knowledge, we can start using them in different places. So the first one, A shape on the 5th fret. Second one, F shape, rooted on, either you can think of it as the 10th fret of the D string or the 8th fret of the B string. The next one, D shape, 1 octave higher. I'm lining my middle finger up with the 12th fret. That's an easy one because you've got the dots there to kind of guide you. Most guitars have double dots on the 12th fret. So you just line your middle finger up with that and get that D shape down, right? Okay, so why is it important to know these kind of things? Well, because if you have a progression, a group of chords that maybe use some of these shapes, you might want to start spicing your playing up with different C chords. So let's take something really common like a C to a G to an A minor to a C. Okay, it's a really common progression. You've probably maybe even played it before. C, G, A, C. And it'll sound pretty similar if you always use those same chord voicings. But let's just swap out the 4th spot. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's take that 4th spot where a C major was and use one of the different ones. So if we've got the regular one, G, A. It already sounds a little bit different just because we're going to a different voicing. All right, maybe let's swap the first one out too. So instead of playing open C, we'll start with this. Go to a G, to an A. G, A minor, that other voicing. Then maybe we can even go higher to this one. And then you can start splitting bars. Instead of playing just like 1, 2, 3, 4, we could cycle through all of them if you get fast enough, which is a really great exercise to increase your speed. If we have 4 beats, we now know 4 different voicings of a C major chord, including the one that you presumably knew before watching this video. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. You can kind of like strum it differently, like 1, 2, 3. So, a lot of different voicings for a C major chord that you can kind of cycle in and out. Now, I do want to do one more that isn't technically a voicing of a C major chord, but it's going to be called an extended chord. And it's not going to be really something that new because we're going to take it and modify this C major shape. I know this video said 3 chords, but this is, hey, surprise bonus 4th chord for you. So let's take that regular C major chord, pop your ring finger up to get that extra G. Pinky goes back to where your ring finger was. So right now I've got 3E, 3A, 2D, open G, 1B, open E, right? Now if you take your pointer finger off, we're turning this note, which is a C, into a B. And by doing that, we get a really pretty sounding chord that's a C major 7. And in most cases, you can really easily replace a C major chord with a C major 7. In fact, in my opinion, you can always replace it with that. Really just experiment it. If you like the sound of it, great. If you don't like the sound of it, forget about it. But it's cool. By subtraction, we're actually adding a note. Thus, we're not making this chord a 3-note chord anymore. We're making it an extended chord. It's not a triad anymore. It's a major 7 chord. So let's take that same progression, the C to the G to the A to the C. And maybe the first one we'll replace with an alternative chord voicing. We'll start with the A-shaped one. And the 4th one, we're using that C major 7 chord, right? A really pretty one that, again, is really super easy to play. So, now that you've got a couple of these under your belt, think about how maybe you can move them around. The beautiful thing about learning these alternative chord voicings is that they're totally movable shapes. Now, for something to be a movable shape, all you have to do is make a chord voicing that doesn't have open strings aiding you. That's why this one right here isn't a totally movable shape, because if you move it 1 fret higher, it sounds pretty awful because the open G string hasn't moved with you. The nice thing about maybe this A shape, you can move it, but just make sure you're not hitting any of the open strings, right? Now if I tried moving it with all the open strings, same thing is going to happen. But these tighter voicings are something that every guitar player should know, and you're going to be really happy that you learned them because you'll kind of see these patterns emerging in your own playing and other people's songs. And again, it all started from you coming here right now, subscribing to this channel, and learning these simple alternative chord voicings. So if you found yourself really blown away by how much you've learned in just a short amount of time, you're in luck because there are other videos here and here that you might want to check out, taught by yours truly. And also, click down here to subscribe to this wonderful, fantastic channel so you can get updates on future videos. Thanks for checking it out.